This is Amud Yomi Gemara and Shabbos, Daf, Ayin, Dalid, Amud Beis, and once again, all the learning should be an incredible schos refuah shalema for Miriam Ahuva Bas Esther and Tina Ben and Miriam Ahuva B'siyata D'Shmaya. The schos HaTaira, Talmud Taira, Kenegi Kulam, Taira B'Rabim, should bring incredible Yeshua'is. We're holding on Ayin Dalid Amud Beis in the second line. We're up to Malacha number 8 in the Mishnah, in the Mishkan, which is v'hatoichin grinding. Amar Papa Ayman de Parim Silka, someone who cuts up beets, chayiv misham toichin. And this is a loaded statement, as silka is a type of edible vegetable, and therefore says the Gemara, by cutting it up, we're going to have a form of teichin. This is going to be one of the big mekayros, that on Shabbos, cutting up vegetables too small will as well be a malach of teichin. Even though you would think that teichin is what? Taking wheat and grounding it into flour. But yet from here we're learning that even cutting something up very small, and as the Mefarshim explain, because taking something large and making it small, that is the malach of teichin. Teichin is not perhaps, as we would have thought, taking something solid and making it into a powder. Even large to small, one piece into many pieces, obviously the sizing, etc., is all part of the sugya, but that's going to be included in the malacha of teichin. Continues the Gemara, Amar Menashe, Chaim Adesol Silsa. If you cut up wood into small pieces, Chaim Mishum teichin. Amar Ravashi, when you cup it on bishchasa, if you're makbid on the side, the size when you cut up the wood can even be chayiv mishum mechatich, for cutting something up very small. V'halash v'ayifeh, kneading and baking. Amar Papa Shavik Tana done bishol samanim. The Tana left bishol samanim, cooking up the herbs. The havi b'mishkan, that was in the mishkan. V'nakat ayifeh, and it listed baking. Why did the Mishnah list baking? Says the Gemara, where was there baking in the Mishkan? We know that there was bishul of the samamanim, of the dyes for the hides. But where was their oifeh? Now the obvious kasha is that, what did I say when we read the Mishnah? I said the lechem hapanim. So there was baking of the lechem hapanim. But, so the Mefarshim explained, that's not a malacha that's intrinsic in the binyan hamishkan. It's not just anything done in the Mishkan. It's a malacha done in the Mishkan, part of the binyan hamishkan, the building of the Mishkan. And baking was not part of the building of the Mishkan, part of the creating of the breads. And therefore, asks the Gemara, why was cooking not listed? Explains the Gemara, Tana Didan, Situr de Pas Nakit. Our Tana mentions the order of making the bread, and therefore it doesn't list cooking. We chose the malachais that are required for bread, and therefore we list baking, even though it's the not cooking like the dyes, but it's equivalent malachais. Perhaps, as some of our should explain, one of the reasons is, which is more common. It's more common to bake, so the Tana listed them through the guise of baking, because that is more common in the average household. Amar Rav Achabai Rav Avira. Someone who throws a peg into an oven to harden it, chayiv misham mivashal pshita. Says, of course, you're cooking the peg. Maybe you would think that all you're doing is straightening out the utensil. Chadish is first softens and then hardens, and therefore it's not just straightening it, it's also a form of bishul. Amar Rabba Ravunaiman, the artach kofra, so who heats up pitch, some a tar type of item, and liquefies it, chay misham mivashel. Says Gemara Nachamal Pshita, of course you cooked the item, of course it's bishul. Explains the Gemara, 8 lines from the white lines. I would have thought, I would have thought that since it hardens, therefore maybe you're not chayiv. Kamash Malan, that in the process it does soften and then it hardens, therefore you're going to be chayiv. Amar Rav Ayman David Chavita. Someone who makes a barrel, chayiv mishum sheva chatois. In one creation of a barrel, you could have 7 malachais de'oraisa. Tanura. If you make an earthenware oven, chayiv mishum shmeina chatois. Amar Rabbi, hi man. Now, what are these 16 and 17? Rashi explains that when it comes to the barrel, you have to grind, then you have to sort out the pebbles, you have to sift through the dirt, you have to knead the dirt, you have to smooth it, You have to create a fire, and then you have to bake the barrel. 7 different chatois. And when it comes to making the earthenware oven, there's an additional extra layer of mud that is added, and you have to do makbeh patish, and that's how you're going to get, and therefore that extra layer is going to be the 8th chatos. Amar Rabbi Hayman David Chalta. If you make a large basket from reeds, chayav achad eser chatois, achas asrei, 11 chatois. V'chati lepume, and if you sew the top up, chayav sholosh esrei chatois, 13. And these are all you reap, you plant, you gather, you select, you smooth, you grind, you cut. You then have to make the whole loom situation, and you have to make the shnei batinirim. You have to weave it, and then you have the makbeh patish, which are 11 malachos. And if you sew the top, then you have sewing with tying the top. If you spin wool on the behemoth's back, which of course is a fascinating entity, and it was a special chachma that the Nashim had, and that was how they created in the Mishkan. Says the Gemara, by doing so, you're chayiv mishum sholish chatois. Even though you would think you're just being geizis, you're cutting off the wool. Says the Gemara, no. Achas, of course, the first malach is geizis, but you're spinning it straight from the back. So you also have minapit, so you're distangling, and vachs misham taivel, you're spinning the wool. Rav Kahana Amar, no, this is not normal. Ein derech ziza bekach, ein derech menabitz bekach, ein derech tivoy bekach, and therefore you'll not be chayiv 3. Says Rav Eloi, Rav Nechemia, shatav beizim v'tava beizim. They washed the goat's hair and they spun it while they're on their backs. Meaning that's actually how they did it in the creation of the Mishkan. Says the Gemara, you're right, but in the Mishkan there was a Chachma Yisera Shiny, and therefore that won't apply to the average layman throughout history, and therefore there will not be considered separate chatois. Tana Rabbanan, therefore it will be a machlokes whether it be considered separate chatois. According to Rav Kahana, it will not. According to Rav Chana, Rav Yochanan, it would, yes. Tana Rabbanan, if you pluck the feathers from a wing of a bird, and you cut it, and you pull off the hair, chayiv shalosh chatois. Chayiv 3 chatos from Rish Lakish. Toilesh is what? Chayiv shem geizis. Plucking is geizis. Kaitim, cutting it off, is chaim shemachatich. Cutting to size. And married is chaim shemachik, smoothing it down. Hakoisha ve'amatir. Tying and untying, 10 lines from the bottom, the 2 dots. Kshir Mishkan Hechan Avoy. Ask Gemara, where was there kshir in the Mishkan? Amaravishki Koishim, you see this oilim, they would tie the curtains onto the pegs of the tents. How Koishim Nasahatu? Says Gemara, wait! But that is tying to untie. And therefore, stam tying, if it's not to untie, should not be a deraisa. Elam Rabbayish can argue Yeriyos. When they would weave the curtain, Shnifskul Hen, Nima, who had a thread, and there was a break in it, Kaishan, I said they would tie it, and it would not be to untie, it was straight to tie, and therefore that is a deraisa. Amrei Rava, Taratz the Kaisher, you've explained tying. Matir Michael and Meimar. Where is there untying? Maybe that if 2 knots happen to tie together in the process, you don't untie one and tie the other. Before a regular king, you never do that. You never create such a garment in such a manner, which of course brings out that whenever we're making something for Hashem, we always view it through the guise of how you would make it for a man. And if to make a man's garment, you wouldn't do in such a mannerism. You wouldn't fix an imperfection. You wouldn't do that for Hashem either. The Chalazin trappers would tie and untie their nets to get the Chilazin for the dyes. Therefore, that's why it's considered a da'araisa. But so we conclude, it says Gemara V'oloi Kaima, but just 2 tefirahs is not going to last, so why is it a da'araisa? Amar Rav Chanan, Rav Yochanan, v'hu kasha. And the Mishnah means that he tied the 2 ends of the threads afterwards. Hakrei Amanas Litvar. We'll pick it up from here. B'siyata Dishmaya.